Building a global business is building an impact-driven business. This next guest has done that with so much precision and ease. Building LeverA, which measures and develops employees' human skills through immersive and personalized learning with AI and technology. Having worked at one of the most prestigious accounting firms as a chartered accountant in South Africa, to having been an alumni at Oxford University's MBA program with the SIAD Institute. From winning personal awards, including the Top 20 UK Step Changes 2024 award, to being part of the SICA Top 30 Under 35 for 2023. The business itself, LeverA, has been shortlisted for awards like the ISA Awards, the Learning Awards, as well as being put under the One to Watch list. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome onto the show global guest, innovator, as well as co-founder of LeverA, the one and only Bartek Ogonowski. Bartek Ogonowski. Did I say your surname correctly?
Yeah, not too bad, Vuyo. It's Ogonowski, but well done.
Ogonowski. So the W is pronounced as a V, right?
Yeah, V/F, like Ogonowski.
Ogonowski. I love that. I love that. A native of South Africa, which is also quite exciting for me because I'm South African myself.
Yes.
So there's so much common ground to start from here, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you currently based in New York, is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. I'm joining you from New York.
I'm based in London, so we've got two South Africans doing global things. It's pretty cool.
I love that. I love that. And South Africa is on a beautiful kind of pedestal right now. On the recording of this episode, it is the G20 at the moment right now in South Africa. So there's so much excitement happening around the country. But let's kind of understand your South African background a little bit more, because what you've done, I believe that has a big your background has a big part to play with that, because you wouldn't build education technology unless there was something inside of you that is where it all stems from. So what is your background in South Africa? Where are you from, so that your people from that particular area can also shout you out?
Yeah, no, sure. Well, firstly, thank you for having me, and thank you for the opportunity to be on your amazing show. You've had some brilliant previous guests, and I hope I can do your show justice. So thank you.
Of course.
So born and bred South African, you can probably still hear that very thick, proud South African accent, hopefully. I grew up in Johannesburg, so I spent most of my life there. I was born into a very loving family of all medical doctors, which is great, and in a very Catholic home, which is awesome, that I've brought up with love and care and everything good in the South African context. Spent most of my career in Johannesburg at Deloitte, so I'm a chartered accountant by profession, and spent most of my early years there. But yeah, living in South Africa, that is ultimately where the seed of the problem that we're solving now with LeverA was planted. Because as you know, and any South African can attest to, there's so much potential in South Africans. South Africans are the people that have like so much to give and offer. Yet the access to certain opportunities is the thing that is really lacking, especially in an education context. And currently, we're sitting at a point where there's 60% youth unemployment rates in our country, which is frightening. And you've got people that are just got so much to offer the world, but no one's given them that opportunity to unlock that and really be the best they can be. So yeah, maybe I'll stop there. But that's a bit about who I am, where I'm from. And what my driving mission is to. It's all about human potential. It's all about helping others, and it's all about unlocking potential in those that have so much to offer the world. They just don't know it yet, and the world doesn't know it yet.
Yeah, that gives us context, to be honest, because when you speak about that particular problem that is faced by South Africans, but also across the continent as well, and how then that could be that what your product is could be a solution for that. Chartered accountancy, tech, those two worlds don't often collide.
No.
So what kind of led you into going into the financial chartered accountant world, and start your career there? Because you could have gone the medical route like your family was in.
Yeah, you know what? Well, firstly, as you see, my name's Bartek, so I couldn't go to anything other than tech eventually. Otherwise, I would be
That's good.
wouldn't be doing justice to my name. No, I'm just playing. But initially, like I always thought that I was going to be a doctor, but I figured out that what attracted me to being a doctor was more around the people and not so much around the medical side of things, which um, it has to be a calling. You've got to, I have the utmost respect for doctors and people that have gone down the profession because it's extremely challenging and you're making a very tangible difference in people's lives. So shout out to all my family that are doctors and everyone else who has gone on that difficult road. What that gave me the opportunity to do though was see how my family was always making a difference in people's lives. And I was constantly inspired and surrounded by inspiration of trying to help others. So you're probably thinking about where's the link of that and chartered accountancy, and that's more like overall mission. But when I was ending up at school, and I went to St. John's College in Johannesburg, an amazing institution. I spent 13 years of my life there. In fact, a few weeks ago, when I was back in a few months ago now, when I was back in Johannesburg, I went to visit and have a coffee with the headmaster. So it's still like a beautiful institution. I was always inclined to do something with maths and numbers and my business mind started going off when I was 16, 17 years old. And for me, it was more looking at a very like generalistic degree that was very well respected. And I knew that being a CA was a very well respected degree. If I'm not mistaken, SAICA, or the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, has been voted number one some of the last few years, between 1 and 2. So it's a very well-respected global degree, and I knew that I was setting myself up for a global stage.
Yeah.
Went to Deloitte, had an amazing articles experience. After that, I actually stayed on as a manager, and I stayed on as a manager for about 3.5 years. And those were fundamental years of learning about people, because as a manager, you get to interact with dozens of people on a daily basis, different teams, different dynamics, and actually different socioeconomic backgrounds. So really forming the sense of like a diverse mindset, particularly in the South African context. That's how I started in this chartered accountancy route and not the medical route. And very happy that I did, because I truly feel that it's given me the platform to where I am now, especially in the context of understanding business and people. And also I don't want to say very happy I didn't become a doctor, because I don't think I would have coped with all of the stresses and pressures in a different sense. But I'm very happy very proud rather, that I've got 4 members of my family that are medical doctors that are continuously making a difference in South Africa too.
Yeah. And I always tell my guests and our audience knows this that at this point that, I like to be freshly acclimated with the guests' information and kind of journey and story with them as well at the same time. So what they're finding out for the first time, I'm finding out for the first time. And that kind of
Yeah.
makes it in a very organic way of us getting context to why you're building what you're building. And I asked the chartered accountancy question quite particularly because it again has a role to play. That background has something quite unique to play when it comes to business, right? And starting a company. So it will help us frame, this particular startup and business that you've built for yourself.
Yeah.
And so now that connection comes into play. But also what I also found out is that post your Deloitte experience and career, you moved to the other side of the world to go and further your studies in Oxford, which is quite a prestigious institution.
Yeah.
And that gives us even more context, because now your global framework and global understanding of building a brand and building a business kind of comes into play. Share with us that experience. What nudge came on you when you were sitting in that Deloitte office and was like, I want to go to Oxford in London, in the UK?
Yeah. Well, if I may, there was a slight, like there was a year in between Deloitte and Oxford where I was the CEO of a company in South Africa called I Talk to You, and that company was my first real dig into entrepreneurship in a much more like protected environment. Our main shareholders was a very well-known listed telecommunications company, and the purpose of the business was to really help call center agents during the pandemic work from home and still make a sustainable income. And in South Africa at the time, I might be mistaken on the stats, but there was about 70% of call center agents that were single mothers. And our And our platform allowed them to work from home, almost like an Uber driver model, where they would earn an income for every sale that they would make, and basically sustain their living and earn and take away more from that than they would in a with travel costs and stuff and going to a business. That gave me a first sense into entrepreneurship. And in fact, I had already been accepted into the Oxford MBA, but decided to defer it by a year because of COVID. And that was a tough decision to make, which I can talk about in a bit. Going back one step, why Oxford? And to maybe answer your question more directly, or why the MBA? I got to a point in my career at Deloitte where I felt, and no disrespect to the profession, I just felt like my learning had plateaued in many aspects. And I wanted to do something more exciting, something more global. I felt like I had more to offer this world, and I wanted to make a more of a tangible difference, going back to my origin story. And although Deloitte's an amazing company, and any Big Four for that matter, I really felt like I needed to, at that time, take the risk and step into the unknown, break away from my comfort zone, and really start exploring my purpose, like why this difference that I wanted to make. And then I started doing a bit of due diligence around like the MBA, because obviously it's not a cheap exercise to do. It's a full year out of work. It's a big commitment. It's moving halfway across the world. So it needed to be like a well thought out process. And as an auditor, I had the ability to audit all these decisions and obviously make the right decision that I needed to make. But after speaking to alumni, after speaking to people that had been to Oxford, which is the most magical place in this world, and if anyone hasn't been there, I highly encourage you to go there. I will offer you a free walk into it if anyone comes and visits me in London into Oxford. So that's a promise. But I wanted to be inspired. I wanted to my intellectual curiosity was at its all-time peak, and I was at a point where I needed to get out of this environment and do something different. And for me, like, I'm always looking for something new, something different, something more. My nickname is Do More because I'm always doing more, and like that's who I am as a person. And for me, breaking away into the best university in the world, and going to a business school surrounded by global, intellect was really excited me. I mean, if you say to anyone, like, you've got the opportunity to go to the University of Oxford and be surrounded by 21,000 students from around the world, if that doesn't excite you, then I don't know what does. And then the MBA particularly was more just to be surrounded by like and unlike-minded people, all trying to do something different in the world. And Oxford, particularly the side business school, is very focused on people that are trying to make a difference in society. So that's, I mean, I could talk on forever, but and maybe one last point, there's also a big focus on investing in Africa. And every year there's about 10% of the cohort at the side business school that is from Africa, which is an amazing, amazing statistic, and something that attracted me to Oxford for more than the other business schools around the UK and Europe.
And I mean, it's kind of like the place to invest in now, right? And we're gonna unpack all of that. I think we're gonna definitely get into that, because I've been seeing a lot of stats about where Africa is going, where African founders, particularly, what value they have to add within the kind of the global entrepreneurial landscape, which is quite exciting from a global perspective. But I always get asked this question, and we're gonna get into the startup in a sec. But I always get asked this question about traveling abroad from a South African context. That shift for you being in London from South Africa, and having to understand and having to acclimate within the culture and having to assert yourself within the space. What did that transition look like, and how did that expand your mind? How did that help you become not just a better entrepreneur, but a better person?
Yeah, well, I'm laughing because today it was 0 degrees and snowing in London. So climatizing to the weather is probably the key thing to do. Besides the mindset, I think the biggest thing in that everyone always talks about in London, and it's quite like stereotypical to talk about the weather, but that does play a big factor, especially now in winter where you've got the sun going down at 4 p.m. It's 4:30 p.m. It's a very different thing. So that takes a bit of getting used to. For me, I knew that I was coming abroad for an adventure. I'm a very adventurous person. I knew that opening my mind up to the MBA would be incredible. And I remember particularly on the first day of the MBA, sitting down, it was extremely intimidating. I'm not generally a shy person. I like people. I can go talk to different crowds and fit into the conversation. But I remember particularly in the first day of the Oxford MBA feeling very intimidated and almost looking around this room. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm now surrounded by 350 of the world's top minds from I think there was 75 countries or something like that.
Wow.
And these are all the people that were excelled at their school and got top grades, or the ones that were like ballet dancers at the best ballet house in the world, or like ex-military members that have served their country for 15 years, or like people that have got 4 startups in biotech and have sold companies for hundreds of millions of dollars. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is quite intimidating. And as I was looking around and I was like, trying to plot out, wonder what that person's from, or I want to make friends with this person, or who's that individual, and a very intimidating feel. I remember scanning the room, and then looking up, and not even realizing that the lecture hall that I was currently sitting in was called the Nelson Mandela Lecture Theatre.
Wow.
And I just looked up at this like Nelson Mandela Lecture Theatre, and there was a bronze statue of Madiba's face in the front. And I just looked, and I almost had this, even when I talk about it now, I get this like shivers, because I looked at that and I was like, I'm meant to be here. Like, this is the place that difference makers go. Like, you have to step out your comfort zone to make a difference.
Yeah.
It's not going to just be handed to you at a corporate or like in your current job. Go out, take risks, be bold. And in that moment, I almost realized, and I said to myself, you got here for a reason, for who you are. Don't be different. Be who you are. Be authentic, and do like you do. Like, just do more this year, and just go out and do as much as you can, and meet as many people as you can, and and keep your values intact. And that was hopefully that's a resonating story.
It is. It is. I think a challenge I mean, from even that point of wondering to yourself, like, why am I here? How did I get here? And looking across the room, and, in a global room, that is, because if 70 plus countries are in the space, that's a global room, and everyone from different, backgrounds and different stories and different journeys. But that in and of itself is a stretching experience. It's a stretching. And I always tell people, like, people ask me, like, what is it like being abroad? I'm like, it's a stretch. It's like, you get so stretched and you get so uncomfortable. But that uncomfortable place becomes comfortable to some degree because you get used to it.
Sure.
You get used to having to speak to someone from the other side of the world, and, having to introduce yourself. I don't know if you have this challenge of having to explain your name to people and, like, this is why I have this name. This is what it means. But that in and of itself is something that stretches you. But particularly, I'm so curious, because you've had both the corporate and the entrepreneurial experience, and the MBA program particularly is what a lot of people kind of ask themselves whether it's something to do. And I asked this question because of the kind of the cost implications of an MBA program particularly. And some advocated for it being an investment to self, an investment to your career, an investment to your future.
Yeah.
What's your take on that? How do you kind of advocate for it as someone who has done it, and what value has that added to both what one would say your corporate background, your corporate understanding, and your entrepreneurial understanding?
Yeah. Of course, in life, many things come down to timing, and like timing often dictates possibility. The MBA, as I mentioned, is not a cheap and easy decision to pursue, and it's got to be very well thought out, and you've got to have some real rationale as to why the MBA is going to better your career, change your career, do something for you as an individual. So when people ask me that question, it really is like, it's not consultants usually say it depends. It really does depend in this case, because I did see a lot of people in my MBA program that I struggled to understand, like, what their true value of what they wanted to get out was. They might have just been coming from a consulting background, taking a year off in a way, and then going back to that background. I'm like, well, what was it? Just a year break, which is absolutely fine, right? Everyone's got different whys, and I'm not judging that at all. I'm just saying, like, I didn't resonate with that. For me, it was like I came from a corporate background with a slight year of entrepreneurship, and I wanted to do something completely different and change my trajectory. And I used that year as a stepping stone and a safe place to venture into this entrepreneurial world, meet people, be challenged on my thinking, ask the right questions. So if I look back at, like, was it valuable to me? Absolutely. I'm 3 years out of just over 3 years out of the MBA, started LeverA just after the MBA, met my now co-founder there, and I'm living this, like, I want to say dream life. 4 years ago, would I've expected myself to be here? Probably not, right? So it's definite, and it's hard to put a value on that. It's hard to put the value of life experiences of watching UK's Prime Minister in the House of Commons, because that's something that Oxford gave us access to, or being on a ski trip with 50 of your MBA's friends in the top of the French mountains, or having the courage to start a business that you always felt like was a dream, and post MBA had the courage to do that and get funding from someone that you'd met through the Oxford networks, or having your Oxford MBA friends actually put angel investment and money into your business because they believe in you as an individual. So the value is very hard to quantify. Oh, and more on the fun side, playing golf, the best golf courses in England. I'm a big golfer, and I actually played as part of the Oxford team. So that value is something that it's hard to put a value on that. So, was it worth it? Absolutely. And I think for anyone who's curious, anyone who's feeling that, like, itch in their corporate world, or feeling like they want to do something, they've got an idea, they want to go explore it, they want to do something, they want to go out and move out their comfort zone. It's an absolutely awesome thing to do. I don't get royalties from the business school, unfortunately, so I'm not it's not an endorsement. I can't say use my 5% code, but I highly recommend it. And the power of the paying it forward, I strongly believe in paying it forward. That I spoke to alumni who helped me. I'm pretty sure that they spoke to alumni that helped them. Yeah. And I've spoken to many people that have thought about the MBA or are now doing it. So it's that whole concept of, like, you pay it forward and you give your experience to someone to better the world too. So yeah.
Yeah. And that's going to be our starting point for your company, which is I'm super excited to hear about. And so my presumption would be that it began within the confines of that experience, and that's why I kind of sat on that for a little bit, because I wanted to understand that jump between then being in business school and you said you met your co-founder, but then starting from there and going forward. What was happening the day you decided to start this company, LeverA? Where were you? What was going on? What did someone say something? Were you thinking, like, just share with us a picture of that day.
I think the day was way before the MBA. When I was working at Deloitte, I would often see. So being a manager gave me the amazing access to work with, 3, 4, 5 teams at the same time, different audits, different industries. But I would often see some of the most academically and talented people working with me on the audit, but having no idea how to be a good team player, knowing how to speak to clients appropriately, knowing how to be confident in presenting the ideas. And I would often get calls from our clients to say, Bartek, get this stupid person out of my office. They don't know what they're talking about. It's wasting my time. And if you continue to send people like this to my office, we will not work with you as a firm.
Oh, wow.
And for me, that was like the planting of the seed, because I know, and I've been fortunate enough to know how good human skills, or soft skills as people call them, can progress you in life, can open up opportunities, can get you on those proposals, can get you to be promoted in your career early, whatever the case may be. So why can't everyone else have that same opportunity, particularly if they've got the academic mind to do so? And that was where the seed was planted. Now fast forward a bit, and that was always my mission. If I look back to my admission essays at Oxford, because there's a lot of essays that you've got to write before you get in, it was all around this idea of unlocking potential, helping people, giving back, particularly in a South African context, which is, and we're currently working on some very exciting opportunities there. Where I guess the day it all started was the Oxford Business School, or the MBA program rather. In that year, they've got something called the Entrepreneurship Project. Now, everyone in the MBA has got to get into a team of 5. You've got to make the team yourself, and you've got to explore an idea. It could be any idea. And the week of it was the launch of Entrepreneurship Week. You could go up on stage and pitch your idea to the 350 other people in the class, and you had 1 minute, and you said, "This is my idea. This is what I want to do. Who's keen to join me?"
Wow.
And I remember thinking, this is the perfect opportunity to now get my idea out there and start getting the team to work on it. I'd stress tested it a bit in the first few months and spoken about it, but never as seriously as like wanting to get a team together. And that was, for me, was the moment where, LeverA was born. It was the first time it was spoken out. It was the first time that we had started putting people together. And I got on stage and basically said, or paraphrasing, something like, I've seen so many young, academically and brilliantly, technically talented people, but lacking the soft skills or human skills that are needed in order to thrive in today's world. I'm here to I want to unlock all this potential and make the world a much better place by doing so. Who's keen to join me on this journey? And I remember getting quite a flurry of messages from a lot of people that I was also the student life secretary, so organizing a lot of events and being a communicator between the admin and the students. So I really had built up a bit of a community and network. And a lot of people reached out to me and said, "Oh my gosh, it sounds amazing. It sounds incredible. Would love to do it with you." And through that, effectively refined the team to 5 people. And those 5 people then turned to 2, which is now, as I mentioned, my co-founder Emily and I that have taken the business on full-time post-MBA.
Wow. And I think that's such a beautiful, and you said it under 1 minute, actually. It was like 30 seconds. And I would have jumped on as well if I was sitting in the room, because it's such a beautiful... It was
better on the night. It was more rehearsed.
But it's a beautiful mission. And whenever you think about changing the world, you can't do that without people. You can't do that without thinking about how will people benefit from this, and how will people how will people's lives be impacted by this. And I want to kind of look at how we're going to unpack your company in three phases, or in 3 buckets, which is the what, the why, and the how. Right? We've already explained the what as in what is the problem, the lack of human skills, which are a beautiful term, by the way, the lack of human skills, and so how is then again, from the what perspective, is then what is the solution? How did you find the solution then? What was the genesis of that, to having spotted the problem, and then what was the solution?
Awesome. We realized a couple of things during that initial research during the MBA. The first thing was that there was a lot of skills that kept coming up as the main problem areas when we spoke to corporate. So the initial research was speaking to over 200 professional services firms and other companies and asking them the question. We've seen this at the firms that we've worked at, and my co-founder used to work at a big law firm here in the UK. We've seen this in our firms. Have you identified this at your firm? If so, what are the key areas? And we would list the key areas. People don't know how to make a first impression. People aren't confident. We feel like responding to feedback is a problem. Asking for feedback is a problem. etc., etc. And then we said, okay, secondly, what are you doing about it? What are you trying to do to solve this? And to summarize a lot of months of hard graft and research, the two things that we took away from that was, one, there was 31 skills that kept coming up as the main problem areas or areas of focus. So that is where we developed our own LeverA human skills framework, all based on these 31 skills that every professional, especially the young professionals, because that's where we've seen the problem, need to get better at in order to thrive and weren't being focused on in the right context. The second thing we learned, and it doesn't take a rocket science to figure it out, that the technology age is moving so quickly and AI is everywhere now. And in order to remain relevant, not only as a company, but as people or employers rather, you want to give your people the best and latest innovation in order to learn about, in order to practice learning, right? So we live in a world where many people have Apple Watches or smart watches or Whoops or Aura Rings, whatever the case may be, that's tracking your every minute of, how many breaths per minute, how many, what's your current heart rate, what your stress levels are, how did you sleep. It's great. It's good data. We're also living in a world that at your fingertips, you pick up your phone, I can now order any food I want from across the world. I mean, obviously within London, but like any cuisine I want to my doorstep in 30 minutes. And why is education still so outdated? Why is education still on a point that you've got to just watch videos and you've got to just like click on e-learnings and it's still very outdated? So the second thing we learned is that the education, or like the way that this learning and training is delivered, needs to be fundamentally changed and uprooted. And taking those two, that formed the what of our product, as you correctly called it. We now have built our own platform. And whenever we speak to clients, whenever we onboard a new partner, we always host an in-person discovery session, because we're not just a tech solution that's thrown at the problem and saying, go forth and conquer. We sit with them, we understand what the problem is. We host some in-person workshops initially to really scope that out. But then what we do is we offer simulations of these key skills that the firm needs through our platform. What I mean by that is that everyone gets access to our LeverA platform. And through that platform, each learner will do the initial assessment of their human skills. So going back to those 31 skills, you'll see which skills you're good at, which skills you need some help with, and you will get a personalized learning path based on your needs. And then whilst you're doing the lessons, so this isn't just something like a content library that you've got access to hundreds of thousands of videos. This is a very focused and niche learning experience where you as a learner can go highlight exactly the elements you need to learn on and do those assessments. On the platform itself, we go a step further. Instead of just watching some videos, people get better by practicing. If you're running for a marathon, you're not just going to watch YouTube videos and run. If you go into a boxing ring, you're not going to watch Rocky Balboa, although that might inspire you. You won't know the techniques and be practice of running. The same way with communication and soft skills, we offer people a fun and new, relevant way in 2025 to practice these skills with a virtual avatar. So I'm speaking to you on the screen, I can practice conversation, and it's almost like a live simulated environment where I can practice a conversation. There's a lot of generative AI built in where you can get live feedback as well as live iterative scoring on how you're doing. So think of that as Formula One is using simulations for practicing on the track. Of course, it's not the real thing yet, but they're getting better at simulations. Their muscle memory is getting better. They're getting exposed to high pressure. Even pilots are using flight simulators for years, practicing how to land, how to do different weather conditions. It's not the real thing, but it's getting you better and more used to it. And the same way for soft skills, we offer simulations where you can practice environments practice an interview conversation, a difficult conversation with your boss, a salary negotiation, an interview, etc., and get live feedback based on how you're doing, scored against certain parameters. So the what is really a iterative practice tool that forms part of your daily or weekly work, and you continuously get better at the skills that matter most to you as an individual.
And with the advancement of AI now, being able to personalize it even further to some degree, helping individuals themselves find what works best for them is what I'm taking as something quite uniquely special about this product. And I think it's such a necessary and a needed thing right now. With social media on the rise, the human skills and the social skills we are losing fundamentally as people. So this is definitely a much needed solution for a problem that continues to be on the rise.
Absolutely.
For the product, would you say that it is more of a B2C kind of product, or you work directly with organizations, institutions? How have you kind of framed your structure in that regard?
The product at the moment is B2B. We sell directly to businesses. We realized that we needed to get validation from businesses first. There is some potential plans of going B2C, especially when we've got a much more democratized product and a better price point for B2C market. But for now, it's big businesses. We work with big corporates, tech firms, accounting firms, law firms, etc. You can see some of those on our website too. And they train their staff, because we live in a world where you're trying to get the most engaged, productive staff at all times. But particularly today, there's a lot of moving around jobs, a lot of competition, there's a lot of technology out there. So we're trying to keep those jobs and those companies as relevant as possible. And obviously, going back to my origin story, that's the root. That's where I was for a long time. And I know how powerful it is if you use that time productively, and where that can springboard you. And hopefully you get people from these corporates and these tech companies or whoever that going to change the industry in their own right, and wherever their North Star is.
So what do you I'm seeing an interlink between education tech as well as HR tech. Would you say that is the interlink between for these now organizations and institutions?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's EdTech, HR tech. Sometimes it's like AI in education. You could also link it to future of work, because there's an element there. But we also don't want to be considered just training and learning. What we're doing is we are being fully embedded in your workflow as an individual, and we are constantly driving three things: productivity, efficiency, and engagement. And that's the three things that we focus on at LeverA. So that also forms more part of like an operational mindset in a company.
And fundamentally, how did you build your team to be able to create such impactful work, right? You mentioned your co-founder, you met at Oxford, but then from there, how did you structure and ensure that you're building a team that firstly understands the value of what you're building, and then secondly is willing to drive that mission forward in a way that's that is going to continue helping these organizations and the individuals in these organizations as well?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And I think it's probably the most important part of like any business, as you hear, is building the team. We're now at a point where, and this is directly from Steve Jobs, who often talks about building the A team mid-management level. So what we currently are building as a company, I mean, we're 3 years in, growing quickly from a customer acquisition perspective, and the team, we're going to start hiring some new hires in the next few months too. We almost look at people that are going to be the best in their game at that, whatever that may be. So whether it's finance or operations or technology or whatever the case may be, naturally, those people are going to be competitive with one another in a good way. And naturally, those people are going to then hire or attract other top A-team players. So that's what we've kind of focused on. The initial hires were we're quite opportunistic. And if you look at some of our hires now, they've come through like referrals, or our current head of operations and finance is someone that I used to work with at Deloitte 10 years ago. So we already had an element of trust built up, and that we didn't have to go through that whole process of interviews because we just knew how each other worked. So the biggest thing is obviously focusing on the A-team talent, but also finding people that are very bought into your mission. And often that becomes more important than the skill set at a very early stage in the startup. Obviously, as we get bigger and as we expand, we will need to hire more based on like technical skills or sales experience or whatever the case may be. But right now, it's more on people that believe in the mission, believe in what we're trying to do, want to better humanity, are willing to take this risk, because a startup is a very scary experience. It's extremely difficult. It pushes you so far out your comfort zone. It challenges you and throws you around like every day, like a wild roller coaster. So it's not something that's for the faint-hearted, and it's not a glamorous role in any sense. It's for real risk takers that are like, I'm willing to take a risk. I'm willing to put a lot on the line. I'm willing to sacrifice many opportunity costs because I believe in this mission, and nothing's going to stop me from getting there. And that's the kind of hunger we look for when we're looking for people that join us. Because as I said, the startup world is ruthless, and you're gonna have many ups and downs in a day. You've got to just remain level-headed and focus on the big mission.
Yeah. Fundamentally, I'm also kind of taking the word trust, at least for the core foundational team, or for the founding team, or for the initial hires who, without those foundational folks, it's very difficult for the foundation of the company and of itself to be established. So I take the word trust from building the team. How do you communicate that trust then to your, potential clients, to investors, to people who you're wanting to take that mission then to, right? Once you've established that foundation for the people who you're building it with, how do you kind of then bring that trust forward to the other stakeholders who are who are going to be joining the mission as well?
It's a very good question. I don't think I can answer that succinctly or qualified enough to get the best answer, but I can give you my thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Trust is something that is built up over time, right? And trust is something that can easily be broken, and it's hard to then recover that trust, but it needs to be like constant and iterative acts of showing up. And similar to, I don't know if you're familiar with Simon Sinek.
Yes.
We often listen to his podcasts and books. He often analogizes leadership to something, to falling in love. And I'll explain my madness now. But he says when you fall in love with someone, it's not like you see them for the first time and you know that you're falling in love, unless it's a fairy tale, love at first sight. But in order to truly fall in love with someone, you've got to have constant acts of kindness, showing up for one another, reliability, bringing him or her flowers or a gift, being there at an event, having your shoulders to cry on. And at some point, you fall in love with that person. It's quite hard to pinpoint, like it was June 26th at 4 p.m. But at some point, you fall in love with an individual. The same way with leadership that Simon Sinek talks about it, or trust. It's something that I feel you've got to build up over time. Naturally, I'm a trust, like I give everyone the benefit of the doubt. So it's more like I can trust you at a certain level, but you build up trust over time. And with clients, with investors, and I can't remember exactly your question, was clients and investors mainly, and other people. It's just about showing continuous acts of showing up. We're reliable. We will be there for you. We will respond to your messages. We'll be flexible with you. We are kind people. Our mission is good. Our intention is right. We're not there to to be malicious and manipulate anyone. We really we're a bunch of people that have left our corporate jobs. We're so hungry to solve this mission, and we want to do it for your people too. And I think the longer you spend with people, the more trust that gets built up, or conversely, you realize that actually you can't trust someone anymore. So it's a delicate thing, but it's definitely an important word and something that is at the core of my personal life, but also my business life.
Yeah. And I ask, particularly again, I use that word quite intentionally because a lot of the times in the startup world, I think it's an often forgotten phrase for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Can you be a trustworthy, brand or business, and how are you showing up? And I love the words that you use, showing up and doing the work that you had promised to do, and all these other fundamental
Yeah.
things and principles that we might take for granted. But back to our three buckets, it explains to me the why, right? Why should organizations and institutions work with LeverA? Because of these things that you have shared as your foundational ethics, as well as your foundational mission as well. So it helps kind of bring that context into play as well. And why would you say that now is the right time for this product to exist? Why would you say where you've positioned it is the right place for it to exist? And that takes us to the next bracket, which is why. Once again, yeah, if you can kind of share with that with us as well.
Sure. And I love the way you're asking the question, by the way. It's nice to break it down into these buckets.
Yeah.
As you correctly said, I think I've already spoken about why from like more a mission perspective, like why we started it. But why it's the right time for LeverA. Soft skills or human skills have always been important. They've always been fundamentally crucial to survive and thrive as individuals. Over the last few years, however, we are living in a very AI native or becoming an AI native world where technology has become the core of many people's interactions, communication styles, lives, etc. Now, if you're a young individual sitting around the table, you're probably Snapchatting one another, and that's maybe socially acceptable. But we've maybe lost the sense of being present with one another. A lot of companies are working from home or remote working is a thing. Technology's enabled that, and that's amazing. But you're losing that sense of being with one another. I mean, I remember when I was at Deloitte, you would sit around a table Monday to Friday with your audit team because that's what was the norm, right? And you learn from one another. I would often mirror the way that I would want to be as a manager from the managers and partners that I'd seen were like good role models. And I remember that one of my mentors said that to me. And this is anyone listening, it's a good example. Think of whatever job you're in, whatever company you're working at. Think of someone in the company that you truly respect from being like a role model. And when you're with them, how do you feel? How do they show up? How do they dress? How do they interact? Whatever the case may be. Okay, and now try and mirror that and try to take elements of that into your own style, right? Because you respect that and you want others to respect you. And all of a sudden, from all the people that you respect, it forms you. It like forms you as a person as to who you are. But if you only seen someone on Zoom and if you're not really conversing with people, how do you have that sense of like learning from one another? So that's another reason why human skills have become more important because we've lost the ability. Well, sorry, we're not lost, but we have less human time.
Yeah.
And we've seen with big companies, even Netflix is starting to realize, and that's again why big companies like Netflix, which have basically disrupted the whole movie industry and everything's in one place online, they even host an in-person watch parties because they've realized the importance of community. Since thousands of years ago, since the hunter-gatherer days, there was always a sense of community. There was always a sense of being together. And I feel like in this day of digital transformation, which is great if it's used in the right way, we use it in the right way to help scale our lessons to thousands of people. But it's also causing a rift in human skills and humanity. And that is why the why and the time is now. And a lot of companies are definitely realizing that these are the skills that are going to set us apart. And maybe lastly, technology can do a lot of the mundane administrative admin tasks. But if you go ask, I don't know which which LLM you use. ChatGPT seems to be a very common one. If you go ask to ChatGPT, what are some of the human skills that humans can do that you can't? And I encourage everyone to do that and just have a look at the answers and what you get. You'll get something along the lines of why they're so important now. Reading the room, creating like emotional connection, negotiation, etc. So just being empathetic. Those are the kind of things that humans can do that technology can't, and that's why it's so important right now.
And what I'm really appreciating about this conversation, Bartek, is that it's mission driven, which I'm hoping that every entrepreneur who gets to listen to this gets to investigate thoroughly what their mission is for their startup, for their business, for their brand. Because oftentimes we might be glamorizing entrepreneurship so much that we forget these types of conversations that help us nitpick on the mission, so that the solution of the problem is provided in an authentic way that can really affect people in a meaningful way. And I want to go to the how now, right? And briefly understand how you've been able to drive that mission, particularly, how did you get your first investors? How did you get funding to be able to drive this mission forward? Because you need, the support to be able to drive the mission, and us understanding what the mission is and how and why it's important right now. But how do you drive it? And how have you driven it thus far?
Yeah. Also, very good question that I could probably harp on, but maybe let me point out the key things of that. So starting a business, as I mentioned before, is a big decision too, and it's especially if you're leaving your corporate job or any job, because you know that you aren't going to have a salary or cash flow for X amount of time until you're in a position to generate revenue or raise some money to pay yourselves. So we both, my co-founder and I, had to do a very hard look at like our personal cash flow and like how much we could survive for without drawing any income, like worst case scenario. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of like don't do that assessment of themselves to really like appreciate this is a big financial risk too. And you don't want to be in a position where you're kind of doing something, but you're also doing consulting and you're doing a project on the side. We wanted to be 1,000,000% all in. This is the only thing we're doing. But that also means that we had to be quite real about, okay, how much time do we have until we can't afford to do this from a personal perspective. So that was a good hard lesson. And anyone who's thinking about entrepreneurship should do that. So you can be like quite hard on like a line in the sand. When we started getting a bit of traction, it enabled us to start speaking to investors. And another amazing thing about the Oxford community was that we also had been introduced to some investors within that community. And our current lead investor from our previous round was introduced, well, we were introduced to him through the Oxford network, and their VC, which is currently based in San Francisco, invests in early stage startups with Oxford founders as one of their funds. And we had the conversations, we went in a grant program with him, and eventually we were granted our first check. And that was like a huge day, because now it gave us the ability to invest some capital into us, into the team, into building our technology.
And at what stage is this, Bartek? Sorry, like at how many months, how many years was that initial first check?
That was about 6-7 months in.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
We then used that to anchor our pre-seed investment round about 2.5 years ago, and then raised from family offices in the UK as well as angel investors. And I think I mentioned that earlier, where we had some like MBA connections and other family and friends that invested in the business. And that gave us we've got some money, we can breathe, we can focus on paying ourselves. And although you only draw out like a lot less than you would be getting in the market as a startup founder in the first few years, at least we could cover a lot of costs, which is great. And that's how we started. Since then, we've raised a bridge investment round. We actually currently have just launched our seed investment round. I was in America a couple of weeks ago, speaking to potential investors out in San Francisco. There's been a lot of interest because we've just signed up some like huge tech companies and big firms, and we're getting a lot of revenue traction. So we're now at a point where we're raising that seed, and it's going to enable us to grow and to have some growth capital for the next 2 years.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if you mind sharing at what valuation or at kind of the current seed round that you currently are raising at the moment, or that you've kind of started, and how that is going as well. And where are you looking? Which markets would you say that has been fundamental in helping grow your startup? You mentioned San Francisco. What is the support looking like from an African perspective, as well as the UK right now?
Sure. So we're raising $2.5 million at a 15 million post money valuation. That's
Yeah.
kind of like the levels we're working with. The big interest has been from America. There's a lot of keen interest in that market, and we are seeing that people are willing to or wanting to partner with us, which is great. That might mean that the business might have a bit more of an American commercial angle, which is something we're figuring out still, and looking into. There's also been some very keen interest from some South African investors, and that's also something we're exploring. So it's almost about understanding where the key like the strategic investment is going to come in, and what's going to be more aligned to our mission. So that's currently where we are, and we're also looking at there's some great venture capital in the UK still, and we're also looking at that. So kind of all over, and we're making sure that we find the right funders as opposed to just going after money for the sake of it.
Yeah. And how do you sit with that idea of being a global entity? Like, because these are three markets that we've just mentioned just in this conversation. What is the conversation that you're having, firstly, with yourself and with your team about that strategic alignment, and about the particular placement that would make sense for both your business as well as the product, from a product market fit perspective? And what is that challenge? How do you answer that question to yourself? And that could help, founders as well who might be in a
Sure.
similar predicament as you.
You know what, Vuyo, we have like a mentality of like why not? Like go for the like the most and best you can do, obviously within certain constraints. But like in today's world, it's a very easy world to navigate. A lot of stuff's done online with technology. It's easy to fly around, a much easier and faster way of of travel. And I actually love that. I love being around in different places. I've got energy to do so. I was in Seattle and San Francisco last week, going to South Africa in a few weeks' time. So I wouldn't say that we're going to completely like deter our focus. The goal is to set up proper foundational teams in all these different places and run LeverA, run LeverA as a head office. Currently, that's in London, and have the right trusted people across the world, particularly in those three places, because I think that's where it makes most sense. Of course, this is only now 3 years into the business. Initially, we focused on the UK funding. Even though he was in Silicon Valley, but our lead investor invested in the UK business. And now we managed to, because we've focused on global firms. So some of the clients we work with, we started in the London office, and now we expanded to the New York office and the San Francisco office. So it's almost like a natural progression of growth. It wasn't something we just started and saying, we're going to start in these three markets. It was UK first, and now we expanded because we've got the interest in those markets.
Yeah. And you are building a global, I mean, it's a global problem. And I think that's the beauty, of what you guys are building as well, is that this could be fitted in any market. It's not a market
Sure.
specific issue. It's the solution that could be, fundamentally helping so many different markets. Was that something that you initially knew when you were starting the company? Was that something that was top of mind? Were you aware that you were building a global business?
That's a good question. The ambition was there, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you've got to learn to crawl before you can walk, before you can run, right? So the ambition was certainly there, and I always had this vision of LeverA New York, LeverA London, LeverA Cape Town. That was like three headquarters maybe LeverA Singapore, LeverA Sydney, who knows? And that's always still going to be the pushing and the mission. So I would say ambition was there, and any startup founder you speak to, they're all going to have their own founder delusion of where they want to take the company, which is important. You've got to be more ambitious than you can imagine. So I think ambition was there. Like, did I believe we would get there? Like, maybe not. So some of the companies we've managed to sell to and work with are huge global clients that have 180,000 employees. We're not working with all 180,000 employees yet, but now we've all of a sudden got a global reach. As of today, there's probably like, within that one organization, there's probably like 20 countries around the world that people are logging into LeverA and using it. And that's
Wow.
powerful, right? So all of a sudden you break down these geographical barriers and you can create a global business without being in these 20 countries. We rolled out to Australia even, and we didn't even go there. We found a trusted person to help us with the rollout, and it worked. So you can create business, and technology breaks geographical barriers.
Yeah. I like what you said again with the when kind of considering having people people you trust, back to the trust word again, within these different markets to help out with the understanding of each market and its consumer base, right? Understanding
Sure.
what is the acceptable norms from a rollout perspective in these areas and in these capacities, which is fundamentally important when thinking about a global distribution or global rollout
Yeah.
strategy, ensuring to have those people, and how do you best position yourself? What kind of conversation? And I'm asking this particularly for folks who might be interested in the space and in the type of business, or who are in the space and are maybe struggling with the positioning standpoint. Because if you are able to enter three markets or be in three markets, that means that you were able to position yourself, right? So from a marketing standpoint, from a positioning standpoint, how did you effectively do that for LeverA?
I would say that human skills are global, and human skills don't change because you're in a different country. Of course, there's cultural nuances in that country, but the importance of human skills has no borders and no barriers, no matter which country you're in. And a lot of companies around the world, especially the ones that we're targeting, they have a very multicultural and diverse workforce. We're working in London, where you've got a melting pot of community of different countries that work here. We're working with clients in New York that also have people from around the world. San Francisco, people from around the world. South Africa, within South Africa, it's got such a diverse culture too. So it's not saying like, because we're going to be in the UK, we're going to do human skills UK, and we're going to go to America and do human skills America. And again, caveating, there's some cultural nuances you've got to be familiar with, but the core of human skills remains consistent with every person as a human being. And that's the core message, that we can roll this across the world, because those key human skills are foundational to any human being.
Yeah. So intentionally choosing, or rather enabling your business to be a global solution, then that helps with positioning it to multiple different markets, right? I'm taking that as a response to that. Would that be
Absolutely.
accurate? Yeah. Yeah.
And also, like, you want your people to connect. You want your people to work better. You want to get the most productive staff. You want people to stay at your firm. These are all key things that the benefit of human skills will have on your organization. So again, going back to the 3 points I mentioned earlier, like our value proposition: productivity, engagement, efficiency. Those are the three things that how we position our value to businesses. And all of those is a direct correlation between enhanced human skills and enhanced productivity, engagement, and efficiency.
Yeah. And also being able to, again, be in these different spaces and markets, something like your branding, your name, and how you mark or how you package what it is that you're building is quite essential. How did you guys come up with the name LeverA? I mean, it's palatable for any kind of space that you can be in. And I love what they say about tech companies who, when they're picking their names, is kind of short, it's simple, it's to the point. But how did you guys come up with the name? What was the inspiration behind it?
We just picked it out of a hat, actually. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. We didn't.
I was like,
We-
wait, how did it?
I'm just playing. The initial name of LeverA was Speak Up, and the name Speak Up had the wrong connotations because it meant that soft skills or human skills is only about speaking. Communication is just one of the key elements of human skills. It's about listening. It's about body language. It's about mindset. There's many other things. So we wanted to get rid of that name and come up with a name that represented the sense of our mission. And our mission is always to unlock potential, to uplift people. And the word lever in Latin comes from the Latin word, lever is the Latin word for elevate or uplift. So it ties nicely into our mission, lever. We also then play on the word leverage, because we are leveraging technology to uplift people and humanity. And even in the logo, so thanks for asking, because it took a while to get to the right name.
Yeah.
Even in the logo, you'll see at the end it's an A, but without the cross line, because that represents an arrow upwards. So with LeverA, you will be uplifted. And there was a lot of design that went into that too.
Yeah. I mean, all these things come into play,
Sure.
and that's why I'm kind of asking them so that we can also help package this to be a solution to someone who is in the entrepreneurial space as well, and might be seeking those questions
Sure.
and asking those questions themselves. And where are you currently right now, individually? Have you found the balance between, you said you're 1,000,000% in. Is entrepreneurship that kind of thing for you where it's like, until I get to perhaps this seed round, I'm not going to put all of my energy in, I'm going to relax a little bit. Where are you currently in that scale? Are you still 24 hours sitting on the desk pounding at it, or are you a little bit more relaxed?
Um, I would say still very intense at the scale.
Yeah.
And the moment I start losing energy for this business is a worrying sign, right? Because I feel like I'm all in at all times. And obviously, I still do keep a good personal life. That's important. If you can't run yourself as a company, well, sorry, if you can't run your own health and your own family life and friendship, how are you meant to run a company? So of course there needs to be balance, but the startup world is intense and it does require a lot more hours, a lot more effort, and you never switched off, right? Of course, there's moments where you've got to go to the gym and see friends and go on holidays, and you need that, otherwise you'll burn out. But every other moment where I'm in the zone, I'm fully in the zone, and I can continue until I'm too tired to keep my eyes open, pretty much.
I love that. They always say you swap your 9 to 5 for a 24 hour with entrepreneurship because your brain
Yeah,
never stops working. You just never stop. And
it
what
does.
would you
Yeah.
say has been the one key thing that has made you as a person, that entrepreneurship has built you in you, or one skill or one lesson or nugget that you've taken that has developed you as a person, as Bartek, that this business or entrepreneurship has taught you, and that you are grateful to having stepped into this world because of this outcome it has had on you personally.
Mm. It's very hard to put just one thing. There's there's books that I need to write over the last 3 years of what I've learned.
Yeah.
There's honestly a lot of things. Um, but the word that comes to mind, and it's always important to sometimes just trust your gut on these kind of questions, is grit and resilience. And I feel like I've managed to, going back to my origin story, I wanted to step out my comfort zone. I wanted to be pushed in Oxford and beyond. I've done that, and I've definitely tested my limits in many aspects, and that resilience and grit to keep going, even though like when things have been very difficult and it feels like the world's against you in many times in a startup, but to keep going, that has taught me a lot about myself, and has taught me to appreciate the good times a lot more and the quality times a lot more. So um
Yeah.
I would say that's that lesson. Yeah.
That you have grit, and it's an important skill to have, I think, as an entrepreneur, to never take it for granted when you're able to, acquire it, because it's very tough in this space. I want
Yeah.
you to kind of share with us, before we let you go, if you can kind of think back at a moment in the past 3 years of building LeverA
Yeah.
that was a very difficult time. What was happening, if you don't mind sharing, maybe one example of what was happening in that experience. What did you then do to get out of that tough space or tough experience or tough situation? Did you call someone? Did you, text someone? Did you go somewhere? From a practical standpoint of what you might have done that helped you overcome that challenge. If you can share that with us.
Mm. Again, very good question. And I feel like those first few months were the toughest,
Yeah.
especially because you go from being in a very comfortably paid role and position. So now all of a sudden you lose that bit of like financial security. And I've never had to deal with that. I've been at Deloitte since I'd finished university. So like, and had a good salary, and even at the previous startup, I was getting a salary there too. And after a few months, kind of going back to almost towards the end of like your own personal runway, which I'd spoken about, like looking at a
Yeah.
cash flow, we had been through like hundreds of conversations, either with investors or customers or mentors or whatever. And we just weren't getting that that initial traction we thought we would have. We had heard from podcasts, and everyone said, "I keep going. It's resilience. You'll get there." But like when you're in it, man, it's so tough. It's like, oh my gosh, I wasn't sleeping like at all. Like there
Yeah.
was, it's almost like lying up at night, being like, what am I doing? Like, what is this? Like I know you wanted to do more, but like you aren't sleeping at all, and this is like pushing you a lot. Is this healthy? I don't think it's healthy for your
Mm,
body. And that was a tough time because there was often like, trying to have a hot bath at like 3 o'clock in the morning, or like staying awake and listening to pink noise on your phone to try and like relax your brain a bit, or to try stop doom scrolling because your mind's just too active.
yeah.
That time is particularly is very difficult. To your second question, it goes back to the point of grit, like not only to keep going, but just keep reminding yourself of that mission, and also don't discount what you've built up to the stage. So I would have to tell myself, you've had 7, 8 years at Deloitte. You've had a year in a startup community. You've got an Oxford MBA. Like you're not just like completely starting from zero.
Yeah.
You've built so hard because you've got the space to go back on. Then obviously there's also the power of prayer, as I mentioned at the beginning. Like I feel that's the way for me to just meditate and calm down. And something my older brother would always just remind me of, like it's okay, like just say a prayer, because it's there's that calms me down in many aspects. And just speaking to family, like that for me, being away from home is tough, but
Mm-hmm.
speaking to them is very important. We're all out here trying to like hustle and do our thing, but speaking to them just sometimes get your mind in the right place. And whether that's video calling my little nephew and niece to like break up the day, or whatever the case may be, those are important things, just to like take yourself out of this bubble and be like, oh wow, there's this whole world that I'm used to and I've built up and I still have. So you're not completely alone.
Mm. That's that part. I mean, and
Yeah.
I asked you that again because I wanted to hear that, those kind of three,
Yeah.
four words, "you're not alone," for someone who might be thinking that they are. And to hear that with all of the success you've had, you've also had those days and those moments that were incredibly tough, but you were able to overcome them with these kind of practical things that you've shared. And you then from there, you've had incredible successes as well. You've won personal awards like the Top 20 UK Step Changers Award last year, the Psycho Top 30 Under 35 finalist for 2023. And then, of course, LeverA has won some awards as well, like the ISA Awards 2024 for Best SEIS Investor Company. So that's something to be proud of from that moment, to kind of look back now in hindsight and say that was worth it, right? To have won awards, to have had global impact, to have been able to travel the world and share this mission and help change, the lives of both individuals as well as organizations. So that's something to be proud of. But what would you say, in your words, is the most proudest thing about this 3-year journey? What are you most proud of? And think about and meditate on as well when you're thinking and going through your days.
One of the hardest things about being an entrepreneur is that you are completely putting yourself out there and being vulnerable to many aspects. Your opportunity costs, your financial burdens, you taking this idea that was once just a presentation at business school, on stage for 60 seconds, and you're getting it out there in the world. So the one very difficult thing is, by exposing yourself, you're continuously going to be criticized, or people that aren't putting themselves out there will often find something to say about you because they've I don't know, if they feel that like they're not there, or like they've maybe just bored with their lives, or whatever the case may be. So going back to your question on the awards, the recognition you sometimes get from these awards or from others or from wherever the case may be just keeps you going a little bit more. It's just that little validation. It's not like we're not doing this for awards, right? It's bigger than that. But the award just reminds you that you're doing something good. It's not going to be perfect, but just keep going. And in particular, I mean, if I had to think back to some of the awards you mentioned, that Psycho Top 35 Under 35 for me was a very special time, because I would often, a few years ago, I would often look at that and almost think of that being something unattainable. Like, how do you even get there? So the fact that I was part of that very elite group, and I flew back from London for it, and it was an amazing experience, and it also put my name out there. That was very powerful. And secondly, from a company perspective, the day we got our first sale, the day we got our first win, was extremely powerful. And I still remember it exactly, what day it was, where I was, what the conversation went like. And in fact, it was the company that I had worked with for 7 years, Deloitte, back in South Africa. That was our first client win many years ago now, but what feels like many years ago. But we had been back and forth for ages, and eventually we got, yes, budget approved, let's start this in September. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, what?
It's happening.
I was like, someone is bought in. And I promise you, and I even get that feeling of butterflies now, because I was like, we get in revenue, someone's going to pay for this. And I told you, I wanted to tell everyone, I told you so. And although it was it was a small amount in the greater scheme of things, it was the initial small domino. And I often believe in that domino effect, you one domino knocks over the next domino, etc., etc. So that was a very proud moment as a company, absolutely.
Yeah, and that domino effect then happened to be more and more and more and more sales that came in the future, and hopefully even from this point going forward, there'll be a lot more sales coming
Sure.
forth to this business, and I would love for you to kind of share what's in your heart right now for both yourself, for this brand, and for this business. What is really in your heart going forward? I mean, we're closing off the year 2025. We're entering into 2026. What are you looking forward to the most? Yeah.
I guess on a more personal note, I'm very looking forward to being back home in South Africa soon and spending time with the family. I think that that's something that many people get caught up in, getting so tied up into their work and entrepreneurship that they sometimes forget that you should never neglect that, no matter what that means to you. So that's what I'm personally very excited for. Um, from a business perspective, we're closing off the year with some amazing lessons, some amazing wins. But the exciting part is that next year we've got some huge opportunities that we've almost got to be quite strategic of where we go after. So it's definitely um, a lot of interest. And if we look back, we're going to, in December, we're doing like a look back over the last 12 months. There's been some amazing reflections. So entering December break, because we're going to have a couple of weeks where we just switch off and try focus a
Yeah.
bit on family and our minds and our bodies a bit. Entering like exhausted, exhausted, excited to be home, um, but also very proud of what we've built as an organization and
Yeah.
what we've managed to do with the very small resource for now. And knowing that with more support and with more team members and more finance next year, we are going to take on the world and more. And that's our ambition going into 2026.
Sounds like a good problem to have, to kind of, be in this predicament of one figuring out strategy more than it is figuring out how do we get there. You know what I mean? It's like being strategic and being intentional as a next step is I would say is a beautiful challenge to have to navigate through. But I think in any way, shape, or form that you decide, or how you guys are going to move into this new year, it is going to be one that's going to be impactful more than anything. And I love impact businesses because I think we need to change the world in everything
Sure.
that we do. And I was listening to a podcast recently, and someone was saying that like having to change this notion of entrepreneurship being a solution to my problem, as in like I have these financial issues I want to change, so I'm going to start a business, to
Yeah.
it being I'm going to start this business to change my life and the lives of others. And I think
Sure.
you guys are such a beautiful sweet spot with that, right? And I'm sure so many other organizations are going to come to the forefront as well and say, hey, like we need to salt our human skills for our employees as well. You mentioned 31, and I'd like for you to give me some juice, give me some tea, as we'd say in a cultural sense. Like, give me some tea. Maybe give me like maybe three or five skills from the 31 that you'd say people getting into this kind of festive season need to be sure that they have. Societally and culturally, and entering into 2026 with, before they sign up to LeverA and get the full 31.
Yeah. Um, one of the 31 is growth mindset. I think it's a fundamental human skill to embody, to know that it exists and to always use it in your everyday life. You can either live in this abundant mindset or scarcity mindset, and we are constantly encouraging our partners and our learners to take more from life and this growth mindset ability. Adaptability is one. The world's changing very quickly. You've seen a lot of news. You've seen a lot of ways of changing of communication and structure and style. Being adaptable is important. That's how we've survived as humanity over the last hundreds of years, and that's the way we will continue to survive over the next few years. And I would say networking is a key one. We also focus on, as those are just three that's come to mind now, just especially
Yeah.
in the context of your question. Put yourself
Yeah.
out there, get to know others, meet people. You never know who you're going to meet, how it's going to affect your trajectory in your life. I make a conscious effort of going out to as many in-person events as I can, and through that I've met so many people over the last 3 years that, I mean, I wish I could actually count how many there were.
Yeah.
LinkedIn does a decent job because you always scan each other's LinkedIn's, but genuine human connections, friendships are made over the last 3 years. So yeah, as you close off the year, as you go into the next year, you are a human. You've got something beautiful to offer, and go out there, network, meet people, and you never know where that might take you.
Yeah. Now, to close off, Bartek, I'd like for you to address two particular, not even individuals, but entities, one being the client and one being an investor, who might be watching, potential client, potential investor, let me put it in those words, who might be watching this or he listening to this conversation and thinking, I want to be part of this mission. What words do you say to those two individuals to bring them in, and how do they get hold of you? How do they become part of the mission? How do they, become a client, and how do they put some gas into this mission that you're building?
Sure. From a client perspective, I mean, I'm not sure if we're too bullish on the word client, because it becomes more of like a partner in this mission, as you said.
Yeah.
So whoever is really bought into the humans that they employ, for whoever that is really interested in unlocking the true potential of others, giving people the platform to succeed in the way that they can, that's where LeverA we can work with you to really unlock those skills and create a much more positive, fun, and confident workforce. And then I guess for investors, it needs to be very mission led. We've chatted to a lot of investors. What we're looking for now is more than just capital. It's looking for someone that's going to help us along this mission to really improve humanity. This is no longer just a training, and we're not just improving an education. A tool. We're not just an AI tool that works sometimes. We are improving society. We're forging deeper connections. We're creating stronger human skills in the workplace, more meaningful bonds, better leadership pipelines, more sales being created, more economic benefits, more jobs being created, less crime, less unemployment. There's a whole knock-on effect that education is such a core of. So if you as an investor, and of course there's a lens of like AI, and what we're doing is game changing. But if you are really want to change the world, and somehow your capital and your involvement in a business like ours can be part of that mission, then it's the right fit. And the founder fit is certainly important. And in terms of like contacting, I mean, I'm sure there'll be like contact details shared.
Yeah.
But I'm usually quite active on my LinkedIn, and that's probably like the best professional way to get hold of me.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we got connected as well, through LinkedIn. It's not a plug for LinkedIn. They're not sponsoring this episode, but it's such an important and valuable tool. Not yet. Very, very valuable tool. And I think, to anyone who is watching, and now knowing that it's a global, business, and but Tech is a global citizen. You can be from different parts of the world to be part of this mission, and it's such a beautiful one. Thank you so much, Bartek. I have learned so much from you in this conversation about the importance and the value of having a mission-driven and a value-driven business into the world. So many nuggets that I took from this particular episode, and I'm hoping that people at home as well have taken a lot of nuggets. When is the next time you're coming to New York City?
Well, firstly, thank you too, Vuyo. It's been incredible. I feel like I just looked at the time now, and I feel like we could carry on for ages. So
I know,
thank you. New York, I will be there hopefully in February or March, so I will definitely let you know.
Yeah, for sure. I love it when people kind of come into the city, and it's something magical about New York City, and I, that I think it's, a melting pot as well, as you said, similar to London, a melting pot of so many ideas, so many cultures, but also a space and a place that when you're around, you're just so inspired. Everyone is inspiring, everything around you is inspiring, and I'm sure you'd know that as well, from your experience in the UK too. So thank you so much. I will be in South Africa as well this festive season, so hopefully we'll bump into each other over there as well. But yeah, thank you for joining me and sharing all of these nuggets. LeverA, what is again, we'll share it in the comments in the description below, but take us to the LeverA, particularly socials, website, and all of that before we say goodbye.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it's quite easy. It's just levera.me or levera.me. is our website. And on LinkedIn, you can follow us. It's LeverA, and through my profile. And we've got a recent Instagram page which would love more support and traction on there too. So that's also levera.me. And TikTok to come. We're doing some very cool Gen Z marketing stuff, which is happening. We formed our Gen Z advisory board, and we're busy working on some very cool stuff there. So, but for now, LinkedIn is our main source, and look at our website too for any further details.
Are you going to be doing any dance challenges on TikTok for the Gen Zs?
I don't know. I mean, that's not planned, but we'll see what our marketing manager says,
I'd like to see you doing breaking a move over there. But you just never know. This new environment kind of challenges us to step out of our comfort zone in so many different ways. But thank you so much, Bartek.
And and we humans. We need to have fun. We need to connect. We need to just be kind to one another, and the world's just will be a better place, and hopefully LeverA plays a big part of that as we go forward.
Yeah, as we level up. That's what I've taken, and I won't forget that part from the word. It's all about ensuring that we level up society, level up humanity, as well as the workforce and the workplace. Thank you so much, Bartek Ogonowski. Ogonowski, such a profound surname, and again, for another conversation, we'll unpack, your name and surname as well, and the significance of it. But for now, we've unpacked your business, and we've understood a little bit more about what it is that you are doing. Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing your nuggets.
Thank you so much, Vuyo.
Of course, everyone, have a good one.